Hi everyone. So when I was a kid, I was one of the classic library kids. I loved the library. I would go after school quite often when my mom was working. I would walk down to the library in our small town, and I would spend hours just walking along the stacks and looking at books, and I would come out of there with a stack full. And it was a time, of course, before computers and everything, where they had to write everything down, and so we had our library numbers, and I was there so often that the librarian knew my number off by heart. She never had to ask me for my card, she just knew my number. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of recapture that, since I've been using my local library now a lot more often. So I decided to do a library challenge. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to my local library, and I figured out that there are 16 basic shelves of fiction, mostly adult fiction. I think I included a little bit of young adult in there. And I'm going to use a random number generator to pick a shelf, and then I'm going to go along that shelf, and I have to select one book off of each shelf. I think I'm going to do two shelves per vlog. So I'm going to go along that shelf, and I have to pick a book off of there and read it, and then let you know what I think. And it'd be a good way to discover some new authors, and just have some fun supporting my local library. I can make a list of some books that I might want to buy eventually. And yeah, so that's what my plan is. So let's go and have some fun at the library. And 1 to 16. Yeah, Laura's going to help me pick two shelves. So let's watch.
Ready?
Yeah. There we go. Shelf 1.
Okay.
And one more. 9. Okay, so I will pick a book off of shelf 1 and a book off of shelf 9. I would show you guys the books that I found at the library. You'll have seen me hunting for them. So these are the two that I decided to take out from the different shelves. This one was from shelf 1, this one was from shelf 9. And they were just picked out randomly based on what I thought looked interesting. One thing that I did discover about myself that I already kind of knew, but I've been trying to watch and see what I tend to like the most, and that is I am a mystery thriller and historical person, because when I started just looking through books at the library, the ones that I picked out that were interesting to me were thriller and historical mystery. So those seem to be my go-to genres. So it's going to be interesting to see when I start doing, I'm going to do a series where I actually start reading things that, where I start reading, trying to try different genres that I haven't tried before. And when I do that, it's going to be interesting to see what I think of them, because I do tend to, even like looking at my shelves when I was going through everything, I do tend to have mostly mystery thrillers and historical fiction on there. So anyways, so these are the two books. So I have this one here. Let's start with this one. I have this one here called The Art of Dying by Ambrose Parry. And Ambrose Parry is actually a pseudonym for a collaboration between two people, Chris Brookmeyer and Marissa Heitzman. And this one is a historical mystery. It is set in Edinburgh, and it is actually the second in a series, but I find a lot of times with mysteries, you don't necessarily have to read the series in order. So I thought, rather than, because I thought this one looked super interesting, so I thought rather than, order in the first book in the series, I wanted to actually read something that I specifically took out from our own library. And so I decided I would go ahead and read the second book in the series. So basically the story in this one is about Dr. James Simpson, and he is a doctor in Edinburgh in 1849, and he's being blamed for the mysterious death of a patient, and there's apparently other patients that are dying around Edinburgh, and the doctors can't seem to solve what the problem is. So his protege, a guy named Will Raven, and former housemaid Sarah Fisher, they set out to clear his name and to find out what's been going on with all these deaths in Edinburgh. And it turns out that there's more to the deaths around the city than they think. And so that looks really interesting. And if I like it, I will probably add that, start reading this whole series. I just want to show you this because this is really cool. I just love when they have like historical maps like this. Like this is Edinburgh 1849 in the front, and then the back papers as well. Like, isn't that just the coolest map? I just love these. Love it when they have maps like that in books. And then I have this one here. This one is called Hemlock Island. This is by Kelly Armstrong, and she's actually a Canadian writer. I've never read her before, but I'm looking forward to trying a new thriller author. She has several books published. And this one here tells the story of a lady named Lainey Kilpatrick. Lainey Kilpatrick. And she has been renting out her vacation home on this little place called Hemlock Island to strangers in order to make it so that she's getting enough money to actually keep the island, which she loves. And what ends up happening is there's a series of events that are getting increasingly weirder and weirder, including like hex symbols and bloody bones and things. And then the current renters basically flee the island because they discover in the guest room closet bloody claw marks, like something trying to get out and failing. And so she ends up going to the island with her niece, who's a teenager. They go to see what the heck is going on. And over the course of the events that happen, her ex, who she recently divorced, ends up showing up with his sister, who used to be a friend of hers. And then another friend of theirs, who is a cop, ends up coming to the island as well. And they start investigating this and start finding weirder and weirder things. And then all of a sudden they realize that their only means of transport off the island has been destroyed, and whoever or whatever is on the island is looking to make sure they don't leave it alive. So that sounds super interesting. So I'm really excited to read it, and I will let you know what I think of that one too. I think I'm probably going to read this one first, and then I'll read the historical one because I just find this one sounds really good. So that's the two that I'm going to do for this library vlog, and I will let you know what I think of those. Hello everyone. I'm over at my parents' place because the power's out right now, and I couldn't. It's just brighter over here. So anyways, I wanted to update you guys because I started reading Hemlock Island by Kelly Armstrong, and so far I've read about 49 pages, and it has sucked me right into whatever mystery is going on. So she definitely gets you hitting the ground running, and doesn't let go. So far, basically what's happened is the main character, Lainey, owns this Hemlock Island, which it was a gift from her ex-husband when they got married. And then when they divorced, he signed it over to her. But in order to afford to keep it, she has to rent out the cabin on it. And she's been having all kinds of trouble with the renters. She rents it out like as a vacation spot. She's been having all kinds of trouble with the renters. The most recent ones phone her in the middle of the night. The island itself has no cell phone coverage or anything. It's out on Lake Superior. And the couple that's currently renting it phones her in the middle of the night and tells her that there's blood and scratch marks, like somebody was trapped inside the closet in the spare room and was trying to get out. But the closet has no lock on it, so why was somebody stuck in there? Or so she thinks it's another prank because there's been, hex related things showing up, and some animal bones and other sorts of things. So she thinks somebody's playing some terrible practical jokes on her. So she decides to go and check it out, and so she ends up taking her teenage niece with her, who she now looks after. Her niece is her sister passed away, and so she's got this niece that she looks after. So she takes her with her, and they go out to check out what's going on at the island. And they end up getting there and hear her ex-husband and his sister are also there, and because he had heard about what happened and decided that he would go and check it out for her. And so then that adds that extra layer of drama. Then they get out to the island, and all of a sudden this friend of hers from the past shows up with her brother, who's a cop, and they've heard about the things that are going on as well, and want to help. And so there's extra conflict there because there's history between the two of them, and then the brother, who's a cop, is kind of an asshole. So they all get on into the house, and they're looking at things, and they end up deciding to stay the night. And then during the first night, this all happens in like the first 40 pages, so it's not really a spoiler. During the night, the niece sees what she thinks is someone down in the trees. And so they go to investigate, and they end up discovering a dismembered hand in the yard, an actual human hand, and she's pretty sure she recognizes whose hand it is. So they go back in, and they're having a complete panic, and all of a sudden they discover that the friend of hers that came to visit, her name is Sadie, is missing. So they go out to the boathouse because there's no cell phone coverage on the island. When that couple phoned them, they had gone off the island back to the mainland and called from there. So There's no cell phone coverage on the island. So they go to the boathouse and they're going to take off out of there because they don't know what's going on, and here the boat is gone. So they assume that Sadie left with the boat and abandoned them. But her brother's still there, and he's freaking out because she's gone, and he doesn't think she would have abandoned them. And they and somewhere around there is somebody who has obviously killed this person, and it's the middle of the night, and they are trapped there. So that's where I'm at right now, and it is very, very intense, and I'm looking forward to continuing it and seeing where it goes, seeing if it's like an actual killer, or if it's something supernatural, or what, I don't know. So I'm definitely enjoying this one so far, and I will let you know how it goes as I continue. Hello everyone. So I finished Hemlock Island last night, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was really interesting. It was very intense. I was pretty well hooked from the beginning. I would classify it as a little bit more, out of your fly. I would classify it as a little bit more of a horror thriller versus mystery thriller, and I don't typically read horror, but I'm always up for trying something new. So it does reference the pandemic and that sort of thing in it, just so that you know, in case that's a trigger for you. And it ended up being a really, really intense book. I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about the ending. It was good, but I'm unsettled with how I feel about it, which may be what she was going for. But anyways, so yeah, I gave that one 3.5 stars, and I definitely want to check out more from the author because it definitely kept me going. So I'm going to read the second book that I took out from the library. So, little update. I've been reading this one here from the library, The Art of Dying, and I am about, chapter 11, about 62 pages in, and so far I'm finding it intriguing. I'm not real far into it yet, and not a lot has happened yet, but it looks like it is going to be an interesting mystery. I'm starting to get to know the characters a little bit. Basically, there's Will Raven, who is a doctor. Hopefully you can hear me over this wind that just all of a sudden came up the minute I started to record. He's... Okay, wind. Okay, so we'll try this again. Hopefully the wind stays down a little bit. Yeah, I'm in town at a park because I have an appointment coming up, and so I thought I would sit and do some reading. But yeah, I've been reading this one. Basically, the story is about, there's a young doctor named Will Raven, and he comes from from what I gather, a bit of a sordid past. I think you probably find that out in the first book. But and then there's a girl who used to be the housemaid working for this other doctor, Dr. Simpson, and she and Raven have a history, but now she's married to another guy. And the doctor that they both work for is this Dr. Simpson, who discovered the usage of chloroform in surgery. So that's kind of where we're at, but we're also getting chapters from the point of view of a woman who has been murdering families and doing it undetected. And I know that's going to develop into part of the mystery. So there's not a whole lot happening yet in the first 60 pages, but it is intriguing enough to keep going, and I'm curious to see how it's going to end and everything, because it is a series, and so if I like it, I'll go back and I'll read the first one, then I'll read the whole series. So that's where I'm at with that one. It was just a light breeze until now. Hello everyone, I'm back. I finished reading The Art of Dying by Ambrose Parry, and this was the second book that I took out from the library on my little library adventure, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars. When I first started it, I wasn't sure how I felt about the writing, because the chapters are quite short, and so it bounced around between viewpoints quite a bit. And so I wasn't really sure how I felt about that. It did take me a little while to get into it because of that. But by the end, I was very invested, and I'm definitely going to read more in the series because I really got hooked by the end of it. And it was just it's a very interesting time period. I did find that one other reason why I wasn't sure at first for part of it was I didn't really like the main male character, Will Raven. He had some qualities that I liked, but he had some qualities that were not very endearing. And so I wasn't sure how I felt about him for a good portion of the book. But his growth arc in this book was really good. I really, really liked his growth arc and how he, was discovering things about himself and changing attitudes that were attitudes I didn't care for at the beginning of the book. So I really enjoyed that. So I'm really looking forward to reading more and seeing where his character goes and what kind of further growth and everything his character has. I enjoyed the character of Sarah. She's a girl who's she used to be a housemaid, but she has desires to be a doctor. And of course it's the 1860s in Edinburgh, and that's not something that would normally happen. So she is a very intriguing character. There was one line in here that I really liked. It says, "It had made Sarah think mournfully of the wasted potential of Mrs. Simpson's sister Mina, her talents and intelligence unnurtured as she sought only to marry well. And this was to say nothing of the wasted potential of all those women who inhabited the realm below stairs, where she until recently had been confined. How many Shakespeares, how many Newtons, how many Simpsons for that matter, had we lost because they were born of a gender that was denied the chance to shine?" I thought that was really, really good. I really liked that quote, because I've thought of that before too. Being a woman in a non-traditional role for most of my life, you wonder sometimes, how many great scientists and musicians and artists and, how many great politicians and everything were there in the past that never got the chance to even try just because they were women. So that was something really kind of deep that I thought was very interesting. The other thing that I found fun in this book was I marked here a few instances of questionable medical practices, because of course the main characters are doctors, and so you get to hear a lot about the questionable medical practices and things in the 1860s. And I had just marked a few of them because they were like, okay. So I'll just read a couple of them. This one here was Henry was referring to a doctor he had spoken to in Vienna. Semmelweis had published a paper examining the far higher death rate of maternity patients on wards staffed by medical students compared to ones staffed by midwives. He maintained that this was because the students were coming directly from the dissection room without washing their hands, postulating that morbid material was being transferred from the students to the patients. When he made the students wash their hands in chlorinated water, the death rate went down. Despite this, Semmelweis was having difficulty convincing his colleagues that he was right. That was just... And then there was another instance here. So in this case, the one doctor had they had accidentally dropped the bottle of chloroform that they were going to use to help this patient before they did surgery on her. And so he took the scalpel and cut out a piece of the carpet that the chloroform had ended up on, and used that over her, like above her face, for her to breathe it in so that she could be anesthetized. And after a few minutes, Dr. Simpson was satisfied that the patient was suitably anesthetized and indicated that Raven should start. Raven wiped the knife on the sleeve of his jacket to remove any adherent carpet fibers, and then made a small incision in the taut skin of Mrs. Glassford's abdomen. It's like, oh. Then there was definitely a lot of the use of leeches. Oh yes, and then this is one of these doctors who it was another doctor. He says, a young man previously in good health, clean living, recently bereaved, poor soul. Bereaved? Yes, his mother died just last week. Heart failure. Dr. Fowler shook his head sympathetically. They say that a person may die of grief. Do you think that is so? Raven tried to keep a growing incredulity from his voice. Surely that would be a diagnosis of exclusion. There are many other possibilities to be ruled out before entertaining such a thing. Perhaps they removed his mother's body head first, Dr. Fowler suggested. What do you mean? A corpse should always be removed from the house feet first, lest it beckon others to follow. And this is the medical doctor saying that, so. Yeah, so there was a few instances of that I found quite intriguing to read, because I love history, and this is the first kind of book that contained a lot of medical history that I had ever read. So anyway, so I liked that one. I definitely am going to read more in this series, and there are actually 4 books in the series, I believe. This was the second one, so I'm going to go back and read the first one, and then I'll continue on with the series. There's 4 in the series, and then I think a novella coming out this year. So that was very good. So for my library vlog, I did read both of these 2, and I ended up giving them both, I think I gave this one 4 stars and this one 3.5, I think. But they were both very, very good, and I had a very good experience pulling these from the library. So I'm going to take them back, and I'm going to pick out some more books. And I will see you on another vlog. Bye!